Let's just say Henry To'oTo'o builds off year two, puts together a spectacular year three. What does that mean for the linebacker group for the Houston Texans and underrated players that could have a major role and impact on the Texans 2025 season?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. Today's show and every podcast is for Texan fans all around. I don't care if you're in Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. I don't care if you're in Louisiana. I don't care if you're in Florida. I don't care if you're in New York. Whenever the Locked On Texans drop, the show is for you guys. And I am here, your Texans football analyst, credential media member, John Hickman. Excited for today's podcast, taking a trip to the YouTube comments world. See what y'all been talking about, catching up with some of the everydayers from the Himalayas. And thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. And also, we look at underrated Texans that could have a major impact for Houston in 2025. And I think that's a very important conversation to have because it's not going to always be glitz and glamour. It ain't going to always be the top 20 guys that hold it down. It's going to be some of them top 40 guys that will make plays for the Houston Texans throughout the season to get them over the hump and eventually hang that Lombardi banner in the NRG. Opening it up today's show with Henry To'oTo'o and his emergence. He had a very good year two for the Houston Texans, and that is where we will begin. I saw Henry T working on some pass rushing moves in 2024. We saw the Houston Texans really utilize him a lot more in terms of blitzing him to get after the quarterback. And so saw him working out and working on different moves to get after the quarterback and maybe bring some of them sacks home, have one and a half sacks in 2024. And that got me thinking, man, with all of the time that he's been blessed to have, you know, how important has it been to actually see him take that time, utilize it, and get better as a linebacker? And those numbers show 2023, rough rookie year for him, 6 games. He started 61 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2024. Now, we also know, granted, this was the year, 2024, last season, where there was no Christian Harris for majority of the year. Can't wait to look at that comparison between their first 2 seasons. Started 14 games, led the team in tackles with 1-on-1, 7 tackles for loss, and also 1.5 sacks on a year. But what is interesting with Henry T is he cleaned up on a lot of his mistakes and errors in 2024 that may have gone unnoticed by some people. But there was no better area that he improved, in my opinion, than his passing coverage and missed tackles. And also consider, guys, he was on the field double the amount of time he was during his rookie year. 2023 rookie year, a 21.6% missed tackle rate. 2024 cleaned up on that a lot, nearly 8%, 13.6 missed tackle rate. But in 2024, Henry put that work in the offseason, right? And he credits Azeez Al-Shaair a lot for getting better. He gained the trust of the defensive coaching staff, and they kind of had to, right, because of injuries. They didn't really have a lot of spectacular players or guys that they may have trusted to put out on their field because of injury. So they had to go to him. He was also a liability in terms of being able to drop back in coverage. But we saw in 2024 a 400 jump in snap count, and he totaled 8.8 yards per target, which was around league average range. So going into year 3, for Henry T, my outlook on him is another year of growth. If he hits that third gear, right, year 3, third gear, remind you guys, he was a 5th-round pick. And Houston does a very good job of taking some of those later round guys, 3rd, 4th, 5th, mid to late rounds, and giving them the opportunities. They got a great coaching staff here in Houston, but they are able to coach up a lot of these guys. So my outlook is, okay, let's see if Henry T can have another year. And if he does, then we'll see the Houston Texans have those different, uh, difficult conversations about Aziz past this upcoming season and through any contract extension talks. Next season, 2026, will be the last year of that 3-year deal. And also, Henry T, it'll be easier for Houston to move on from the uber talented but not available Christian Harris. And I view Harris as a game changer at linebacker. I mean, I am highly anticipating his return to the game. During the time away, though, we saw Henry take those opportunities and did a very good job of creating space for himself. You know, sometimes guys, people get the opportunity because of an injury, but once that player is ready to return, then the person who filled that void during that time, they're back to where they were. I think for Henry, he kind of played himself into a place where I'm not going to label him as irreplaceable, um, but he played himself into a space where, guys, I'm playing well. Not only am I playing well, I got better from all of my inefficiencies during my rookie year. You guys trust me. I trust myself. I'm not playing hesitant like I was in coverage my rookie year. I feel like he created more space and opportunities for himself, even with the injuries to Christian Harris. And so, again, kudos to Henry T on that. And also looking at Aziz's salary for the next 2 seasons, $5.2 million this year, 15 in 2026 through 27. No doubt he'll be here for this upcoming season. But past that is the question. And that brings me to if Henry T is on that level of just getting better, hitting that third gear in his third year, that will create room for Houston to, at what they've been doing and how they've been setting this roster up. This roster has been set up now for the now and for the future at certain positions. And I think linebacker is one of those, being if Harris is healthy for 2025, 2026, then you're looking at a strong group of 3 linebackers that Houston trusts, they love, and will be under contract, whether that be from a contract that they brought him in during free agency or rookie contract. And by the way, Christian Harris, it is time for him to ball. I'm sure he's going to want to make some money for himself. This could all play out in the favor of Houston because of the missed time. And remember, guys, Houston runs a lot of nickel at an extremely high rate. So all signs to me point to Henry T being the next long-term option for the Texans at linebacker. And with that being said, I wanted to give you guys a little insight on Henry T versus Christian Harris first 2 years. Now, granted, Christian Harris, 2022, 2024, that puts him at 3 seasons, only 31 games, 26 started for Henry T, 2 seasons, 29 games, 21 started, 4 sacks for Christian Harris, 1.5 for Henry T, 124 tackles for Christian Harris, 89 for Henry T, 14 tackles for loss for Christian Harris, 9 for Henry T, both with 1 interception, 12 pass deflections for Christian Harris, 5 for Henry T. 7 touchdowns allowed. Henry T, 1 touchdown allowed for Christian Harris. The Houston Texans absolutely want to get Christian Harris back on the field because of all of his athleticism, all of his ability. I mean, he's a former DB, play safety, right? So he has all of the tools to actually unlock that defense at that mid-level for the linebacker group. He just needs to be on the field. And imagine a defense once those guys are extremely healthy, where the rotations are right, there's no real drop-off, right? You can go Aziz Harris, you can go Harris, Henry T, you can go Henry T. Aziz, the drop-off won't be significant. You trust those 3 guys. You can bring them in and out on their own on third down situations, and you won't see a difference in terms of why are we getting beat on third and longs, especially if the front 4 is doing their job and the back 5, the back 4 or 5 is doing their job. And so I think Henry T emerges means a lot for the Houston Texans' future. I can see them locking him down, 5th-round pick. The contract won't be crazy, of course, and I don't think it'll be crazy for Christian Harris, again, due to the time missed. But those 2 guys give Houston a lot of flexibility in the future, not only financially but also on the field because of the growth, the talent, and they just fit what the swarm defense wants to do in the NFL. Now, also, we got to look at underrated Texans for 2025, 2026. There are some players that when you look at them and you see their name, you may think to yourself, he's just a guy. And they may just be just a guy. There's nothing wrong with being just a guy, but that guy should also be ready when their time is called. So who will be my underrated Texans for this upcoming season? We got more Locked On Texans, so stay locked in. But also, Texan fans worldwide, you ever wish that you just manage your money a lot easier and you do it better? Well, you can with Monarch Money. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And with Monarch Money, they're more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Listen, if you share finances with someone, Monarch Money has made it easier to track it all in one place together so you stay on the same page. And what's one financial goal you've been meaning to get serious about? I can let you guys into mine. Personally, it's been saving 10K. And with Monarch Money, I'm halfway there. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Conversation right now is all about underrated Texans in 2025. Before I get to that, I want to shout out Tank Dale. There was a video posted of Tank just working out, man. And listen, boy, would I love to see Tank Dale back for 2025, but I also don't want to see him back for 2025. I want Tank to be as fresh and ready as he possibly can because 2026, that's going to be where he can make his money. And I'm all about young men getting his money, and I would love for him to get his bread here in Houston. But let's see how it goes. Will he be back in 2025? That would give Houston, and of course, it'll probably be no later, if there was a possibility, no later than the last week of November, December time. That would give Houston Nico, Jaden, Jalen, Christian, Tank. That could be scary, but we will see. And as always, speedy recovery to the young man working his way back to being on the field, But now, the conversation, underrated Texans in 2025. Now, the criteria for being an underrated player, of course, you're not going to be one of those quote-unquote household names. Shout out to Texan fans out there. You guys do a good job of knowing the player, deep diving into a player, especially if it's a free agent. But, typically, like Danielle Hunter can't be underrated. Will Anderson cannot be underrated. You can have a starter that's underrated, but you can't be like for one, you can't be on commercials, but you can't be like a guy that everybody knows. So, with that being said, underrated Texans in 2025, and I'm going to start with a duo of DNs, and this will be Daryl Taylor and Derek Barnett. This is why I'm giving those guys underrated tags and why I think that they would be good for Houston in 2025. When I look at the snap count between Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, and for some people, and I'm on this bandwagon, by the way, 51% defensive snaps for Will Anderson. Granted, he was coming off injury. There was a couple of games where there was one game he only played in 10 snaps. I think he had 2 sacks during that run, but was coming off of injury. But I would like to see that number a little bit higher. Of course, Houston does a good job of rotating guys, especially through the first couple of quarters to keep them fresh for the fourth. But when I look at Taylor and Barnett, who somehow, some way, find ways, even in his older days, more wiser days, to make plays like he's been making for the last couple of seasons for the Houston Texans. Those are 2 guys that I trust to be able to go out there and spell Danielle and Will when they need to, give them a break when they need to. And also, if Houston is in a situation where they have a good lead going into the fourth, can those guys be some good closers for the Houston Texans? Not to say that we won't see Daniil or we won't see Will out there on the field, but can you trust those guys to not essentially lose the lead? Can you trust those guys to do their job, do it well, be where they need to be, and create that pressure? For Derek Barnett, he's been that guy for the last couple of seasons for Houston. Daryl Taylor is a new player for Houston, right? He hasn't been in Houston for a long time. Was signed this offseason. But for the Houston Texans, the real Taylor, excuse me, but for the Houston Texans, what can he mean? And I mean, what can he do for the Houston Texans on that front four? Well, came into the league 6.5 sacks. His first 2 seasons, 16 sacks combined. The last 2 seasons, 8.5 sacks combined. He can still make plays. He's a playmaker out on that edge, and I'm very excited to see just what overall impact he can have, especially for Will. That snap count number can go up. For Daniil, and this may be more so for the earlier parts of the season or midway through the season, Houston does have an early bye week. Which one of those guys, and my expectation, honestly, is for it to be Daryl Taylor, which one of those guys can D'Amico Ryan send out there to kind of dial it back a little bit on Daniil to make sure that when the playoffs come, he is ready? 2024 playoff. Will Anderson, 3.5 sacks during the playoffs. Daniil Hunter, 0. 4 solo tackles, 7 tackles all together, 3 QB hits. So when I look at a player that may benefit from just a break early in the year, it's that guy. It's Daniil. So looking forward to that. Also, the next player that I would say, man, he could be something that could, in games, help the Houston Texans, win a game or two here and there. Guys, I'm a big believer in field position. I am a huge believer in field position. So Tommy Townsend is a guy that I think he needs to kind of redeem himself a little bit. Didn't have the best of years in 2024. He had some very good moments. 76 punts, averaged 48 per punt. His longest on the year was 69, 7 touchbacks, inside the 20, 39 times. So, I mean, that's a player that, he was 15th in average, tied for 4th. This is funny. 76 punts, tied for 4th in the NFL. The longest on the year was 14th. It was 69. Inside the 20, now this is where he gets, that's where you guys may like it. 39, that was 2nd in the NFL. He had some up and down moments, as you can tell by the numbers, but you don't want to see him 4th in the NFL again, but you do want to see that number inside the 20 consistent. For the Houston Texans, if he can be a field flipper, then that is an underrated weapon, especially for a defense that want to create that pressure. And the more offenses get backed up inside their 20, the more they feel that playbook kind of shrinks a little bit, the more defenses can lock in from taking away quick options and getting after the quarterback. And Tommy Townsend can do that. And maybe we could see Daryl Taylor go out there and benefit from Daniil on the sideline for a moment, and he can go get a sack or two. Maybe it'll be Will Anderson, but I definitely think Tommy Townsend is a player that will be underrated for the Houston Texans in 2024. Now, 2025. Foley Fatukasi, the big man in the middle that they brought back. You guys know the numbers, and if not, the Texans' run defense was significantly better when he was on the field. When he was off, teams were able to essentially have their way with him, with the Texans. They brought him back. Smart move, smart decision. I want to see how can between Foley, Mario Edwards, and Tim Settle, Sheldon Rankins, who's back, I want to see how those guys can wing up, bring Keontae Hamilton under their wing. But for Foley, he's absolutely needed. Imagine a defense where Your linebackers are on the field. They are healthy, and Foley is commanding the middle, the inside. Guys are not able to push him back to the second level, giving linebackers clear vision where they need to go, the holes they need to hit. Foley Fadakowski is a problem simply because, again, underrated part of his game in 2024, 2025, in this era of football. And Aaron Donald kind of made it hard for people to judge fairly. Everybody on the inside not going to get sacks. That's not the case, guys. Some guys get sacks. He only had one in 2024. For his career, he has 5.5. But he's been in the NFL since 2018. So obviously he does something well. Everybody ain't going to get sacks, but somebody got to just maul over a guard. Somebody got to just punish a center. You ain't taking me back there. I'm not going for a ride. As a matter of fact, you going for a ride. I'm pushing you into the backfield. That gives me the leverage. That gives my defense the leverage to go out there and make plays. Foley Fadakowski is a player that I think will be extremely underrated for the Houston Texans moving forward. And again, all of those guys are not necessarily household names. Nobody knows punters, which is kind of unfair. But nobody keeps track with a punter's name. Nobody keeps track of guys that have been moved around multiple teams. Derek Barnett, multiple teams. Daryl Taylor, multiple teams. Foley Fadakowski, multiple teams. But moving forward, those guys can play a significant role to the Houston Texans for their quest for a championship, on their quest to a championship. Now let's take a trip to the YouTube comments. Let's see what you guys have been talking about before we close out today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Texans your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. Training camp is getting closer. Moves are being made. What a day for Pittsburgh. But host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to dive into the YouTube comments. What have y'all been talking about? As I look at the YouTube comments, man, you guys have been killing it lately. I put up actually the Locked On Network social media team. They've been doing a very good job. They put up a short on YouTube. They've been cutting up some good shorts and putting them on YouTube, so shout out to them. But this was the Super Bowl caliber defense in Houston YouTube short. And my guy, AJ from CJ Basement 6574 said this is the closest we've had to a complete team since the Texans became an organization. And you know what, AJ from that basement? Yes, from top to bottom. What the 2011, 2012 team has, they had Andre. This team has Nico. I mean, Nico isn't Andre yet. They had a young Arian Foster. Like when we compare if I look at the best teams in franchise history, it's going to be the 12-4 Texans team in the early 2010s when Matt Schaub leading the way. I know one of those years he threw for over 4,000 yards. And it'll be this version of the team. They had the offensive line, I think, and they had the defense. What puts this team, I think, over the hump will be quarterback play. This is why talking about C.J. Stroud is very important, because the Texans, they chose Matt Schaub over Peyton Manning. That came back to bite him in the ass immediately. Then years down the line, they found their franchise quarterback. He's in Cleveland, doing whatever you can do in Cleveland. But now with CJ and how the team has been put together. See, the difference between this franchise now and when Deshaun had it was a lot of great names, but it didn't feel complete. It didn't. I during Deshaun's During that window where it felt like the Texans could do something, there was no Derek Stingley. The linebacker group was not as good as this one. They still had J.J. Watt, but he was up in age at that point. But they didn't have a Daniil and Will. So it's a difference in defense. They had the offense, but then Bill O'Brien was calling plays, and he was also the head coach. And so, who do you trust more? Like right now, I think Bill O'Brien is the best coach in franchise history, but that's based off of longevity. Once we see D'Amico Ryans with that same amount of time, I think the conversation will be different. But in my opinion, this is the most complete team the Houston Texans have had and will turn out to be the most complete team the Houston Texans will have in franchise history. Now, Jalen Reed at safety, or is it time to sign a vet? And this was on a few of our podcasts, whether it was a squad show or just in the comments, you guys were not happy with the Houston Texans not signing Jair Alexander. And to that point, I don't think Jair wanted to come to Houston. I think Jair views himself as a starter, even with the time missed. Does Jair fit the Houston Texans right now? Play-wise, absolutely. Talent-wise, absolutely. But then how much did he want to kind of sacrifice? He's okay with going to Baltimore. I can go play with my boy Lamar Jackson again. The $6 million is, but if he wanted to come to Houston, what that price would have been different. And I've been saying all along, this is no inside information, but I do feel like Houston is leaving money aside to set themselves up for some KD-like in-season move to get them over the hump. So I don't think Jair would have worked out in Houston because I don't think Jair wanted to be in Houston. I think he knew where he wanted to go, and that's where he is. And for Houston, they didn't want to jeopardize overspending for a player that may not play the full season. Did CJ Stroud really struggle? And on this podcast, a lot of you guys had the same thing to say. If last year was a sophomore slump, it was one of the best slumps I've seen. That was from Stevie Reed's 555. He also said to have a sophomore slump and still make the playoff game and win a game is very impressive. So during this podcast, I also talked about a few things, like is D'Amico Ryans a top 10 head coach in the NFL, returning head coach in the NFL? I say yes. We also talked about, was that a CJ Stroud sophomore slump? My man, J-Mon, the dude, I flipped out when I saw Kevin Stefanski slide in at number 10 on that list ahead of D'Amico. The delusion around Kevin Stefanski is real. How does a coach of a three-win Browns team last year get ranked as a top 10 coach? I don't know, man. I just think the league they don't tap in with the Texans like they should, maybe. And this is why it's important to listen to your Locked On networks, whether it's the Rockets, who they got a lot of great things going on right now. The Astros are balling right now. The Texans are, we're about to get to training camp soon in a few weeks. We cover it from a perspective of seeing this team each and every day. And then we look at the outside noise. But D'Amico and his defense, like Kevin Stefanski is supposed to be an offensive guy, and D'Amico's defense embarrassed him in the playoffs on a big stage. So I 100% don't understand it either. J-Mon, the dude, you all right with me. Last comment, Terrell Scott, Tyreek Hill could give them that edge if there was a KD-like move the Houston Texans could make. I suggested Tyreek Hill, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is a lot more realistic. He's a lot more financially, how can I put it, like it wouldn't break the bank for Houston. George Kittle I think would probably be, out of all three options, he would probably be the best option. Tyreek Hill is a player that comes with a lot of baggage, and that baggage also mainly includes that salary cap. And how long would he fit here in Houston? But if we're looking at immediate move to get Houston over the top, Tyreek Hill is one of that. I don't know how much Tyreek Hill's off the field concerns that teams may have, along with that salary, does Houston find attractive, if at all. And so while I think Tyreek would be good in here in Houston, especially with all of the rumors coming out of Miami, do I think that move will happen? I don't necessarily see it happen, at least as of right now. Thank you guys for watching today's episode of Locked On Texans podcast. Please subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube. And wherever you listen to your podcast, follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. We are still in our off season. That ends in a couple of weeks. We'll be back. I'll be back with more 5 shows a week. It's going to be fun. Off-season training camp is going to be hot, but ain't nothing going to be hotter than the Locked On Texans podcast. Until next time, ladies and gents, peace.